You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, me and Pat the Designer are going to go through some things and tell you guys why the Chicago Bulls' future outlook isn't as bad as what some Bulls fans make it out to be. We're also going to talk about Vucevic's future with the Chicago Bulls, as he's recently talked about what his retirement could look like. All that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every single day. That's Pat the Designer, host and creator of the Windy City Breeze and host of the Chicago Bears podcast over at ESPN 1000. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts as well. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. That's they had to throw that in there.
They threw a little wrinkle in there. That's not bad.
Wrinkle in there. Yeah, that's not bad at all. All right, Pat. So we're here to kind of paint a realistic picture. There's a lot of narratives around what the Bulls' future looks like. There's still some people that still hold on to this narrative that the Bulls have no picks, that they've given up all their picks, or some that say the Bulls have no money. We're gonna just talk about the realistic place that the Bulls are in right now.
Let's do it.
So the first thing is the narrative of having no draft picks. The Bulls owe out one more draft pick. That's to the San Antonio Spurs. It can convey as early as this year. It could go to next year if we end up keeping our pick next year. Or if it doesn't go, I think over the next 3 years, it turns into 2 second-round picks and eventually will convey into a first-round pick. But other than that, the Bulls own all their first-round picks outright, and they recoup some second-round picks in the DeMar DeRozan trade, so they got some of those back as well. You want to stop there? You want to just focus on the draft picks right now and talk about the money later? We
can talk about the draft picks. I mean, there seems to be this stigma around the Bulls that like it's over if we don't get this top 2025 pick. Now, I think that a conversation could be had on, what level of player are you getting every season, right? But there's always a gem that you can go out there and find. Like, name me the last draft where nobody came out and was talented. You know what I mean? Like, even this year's draft, like when I look at it and people are like, well, this is a weaker draft. Yeah, it's a little bit weaker, but there's a lot of solid role players that you're probably going to end up getting out of it. There's players that we're going to talk about 5 to 10 years down the road here where we go, no, that's a guy that you want to have on your team. If you're competing, man, I wish we had gotten that guy in the draft. Hopefully the Bulls end up getting that in Modest Vucevic. And then at the end of it, right, like there's always that one guy where it's like, how the heck didn't we evaluate this guy? How didn't we find this guy? How'd this guy fall to, right? Terrence Shannon Jr. may end up being one of those guys, right? How'd he fall to? Was he the 28th pick in the first round? Like, how the heck did everybody end up missing out on him? So I think when you talk about the draft capital, Bulls fans feel like you're in this state of the end of the world if you don't get in on the Cooper Flag discussion next season. And realistically speaking, would it be nice to have Cooper Flag? Yes. Is that possibly a franchise-altering player? Yeah, it feels like he could be that level of player. But it's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Like the Bulls' future is not over if we don't win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and that's what the Bulls are hoping for. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the Bulls, if they can win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes by just being organically bad, then cool. Like, but the Bulls aren't out here trying to tank. There are teams that are actively trying to tank. Now, with that said, the Bulls weren't trying to tank when they got Derrick Rose either. They just were a bad team and got lucky in the lottery. So that's something that we'll see. Like, it's some people that have this mindset that if the Bulls just aren't outwardly trying to tank, it just means that we're going to have zero chance at the first overall pick. I think some people forget this is a lottery. And typically, if you really look at the last 4 or 5 drafts, the worst team hasn't gotten the first overall pick. So, it is what it is. You kind of just got to go through the lottery, aka the NBA maybe fixing a few things from year to year. And maybe this is just our year,
We'll see. We'll see. Money-wise, what's it looking like, my boy?
So now, money-wise, it's a completely different outlook than what you've heard, people. Even now, the Bulls still have $9 million underneath the luxury tax. Now, we don't have $9 million to spend. We only got $4 million of a mid-level exception, but the Bulls do have some leeway now. But it gets better year to year, and I'm gonna lay this out. Apologize now. We're gonna get very kind of cat nerdy here for people, but Pat to add a little bit more flavor on it while I'm in the nerd area right now. Flavor in your ear. That's what I'm talking about. Calm
I just
down.
wanted to know where we were getting to.
Flavor in your ear.
Okay.
Flavor in your ear. All right. So next offseason, the Bulls can have $56 million in cap space. Or underneath the luxury tax, because we know the luxury tax is what the Bulls basically have as their hard cap. Now, that is going to be lessened some by the Josh Giddey extension, but it could also be raised some by Nikola Vucevic isn't expiring if you can deal him. If you do deal Zach LaVine at some point this season and you take back some expiring money, may not all be expiring, you also can increase that to where you can keep it around that $56 million. So the Bulls have some flexibility there. Now, where that benefits the Bulls at is two things, right? Is that it benefits the Bulls that if we have a season this year where the young guys do take the leap that the front office is hoping for, then maybe you do make some moves to bring in some veterans to help support those young guys in the leap that they've made the previous year. If they do not make that leap, then at that point, maybe you fill it out with veteran minimum contracts. They expire, and then you kind of preserve your cap space that way, but it's not dire. Going forward into the 2026-27 season, the Bulls would then have, as of right now, without moving Zach LaVine, $121 million in cap space. Now, again, the Bulls will have to extend Ayo and Kobe White around that time, and I think Dalen Terry will also be a restricted free agent. But again, Vooch is off the books. Lonzo's off the books. Zach LaVine, this money right there, the $120 million is still with Zach LaVine technically on the books because his contract is going through there. So there is still more flexibility in that area. And then you're looking at it increases every year. We're talking about by the 2027-28 season, the Bulls theoretically, now it won't be that much because they're going to add some money over that time. We're talking about $220 million beneath the luxury tax. We're not in this dire spot that people act like we are money-wise.
And I think the thing is too, right? Like when you talk about the money aspect of it, it is the mindset though of, well, are we going to pay players that aren't going to benefit us? Are you going to give big money to Kobe White if Kobe White does continue to improve, right? How far does that get you? Are you going to pay big money to Ayo Dosunmu? How far does that contract extension get you? I kind of understand why Bulls fans are more concerned from a financial point, especially with how AK has operated things. But
that's very true.
I like how you said it, though. It is not the end of the world financially for the Bulls. The Bulls are not, to me, I think that there's this thought process that we are in a space of cap hell and we are in a space of draft hell, and we're not.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it feels like we've got El Diablo sitting here running things for us a little bit. You know what I mean? Like maybe it feels like you're making moves that aren't going to get you out of the position that you have. And I guess I understand that to an extent. But even with that, though, right? Like I think that the Bulls were trying to make moves based on the team that they were trying to build.
Yeah.
And trying to keep that team going, where it seems like they've more so moved off of that almost fully, and they're trying to do whatever they can to start this new generation, this new version of the team. And so because of that, like, I don't think that the Bulls are in this gloom and doom spot at all. Like, if we're being honest, the fact that they're willing to go out and get a guy like Josh Giddey, the fact that they have Kobe White ascending, the fact that you have a guy like Ayo Dosunmu who can come off the bench and essentially play that Alex Caruso role, it to me, and I know it's not the same with Giddey and Lonzo, but I think I said this last week, it feels like they're trying to rebuild a different iteration of the team that we saw, that we liked for the first 35 games.
Yeah, something very similar to that. And I think the important thing is that they're creating an opportunity. They're creating some flexibility, right? And that's what you want to do. We've often talked about how it seemed like for the last few years, AK didn't really think about ahead. And it seems like in going this retooling, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, and going younger, they looked at it and said, hey, if we're going to make that move, this is the time, because if these young guys don't work out, we can create a little bit more cap. We don't have to be right up against it. If the Bulls would have re-signed DeMar DeRozan, for example, and kept this thing going another year, that would have been another 3-4 years of being just right up to where you don't have that leeway. You don't have that lateral ability to move within your cap space to really add talent in. And that's what we've seen the last couple of years with that core, right? We had to add vet minimum guys in Torrey Craig and Andre Drummond who are solid, but maybe if we need a little bit more, we didn't really have the ability to do that. So, and I want to be clear here, any opportunity that the front office has created, it still does not take away from the fact they got to be smart in what they do. They got to be smart in the contracts they give out. They got to be smart in the way that they draft, because if you're not with those things, it all doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll say this before we get off of the topic, right? It is not an excuse from me at all that the front office has made some of the decisions that they've made.
Yeah.
But it is something to say that it's been impressive how these moves have failed that they have made. Things that you felt were surefire moves have gone the wrong direction, right? The Lonzo Ball thing, right? Where I guess maybe you could see the writing on the wall with him injury wise, but how injured Zach LaVine has been over the last 3 years. Zach LaVine was a 28, 8-8 guy. Like that's what we left. He was a ridiculously good player. I mean, 28, 8-8, 28, 5-5 guy, right? Like that was one of the best scorers in the NBA. It is impressive to see like all of these moves that you felt were so sure to pan out when they were being made in the moment. And I remember a lot of people being on board with them.
Yeah.
Just like go by the wayside and completely fail.
Yeah. And we'll see, man. We'll see. Like I said, this is not saying the last phase with this ownership group. They'll give this front office a long time, but like this is the last time. Yeah, they got a long time. But this is the last time where I'm looking at them and saying, hey, you've created yourself a lane. Now let's see how you operate within that lane that you created for yourself. Let's see how far you can take the Bulls over that time.
100%.
All right. Next up, we're going to be talking about Nikola Vucevic and his future. Could he earn another contract with the Chicago Bulls? I know that's going to be murder to some Bulls fans' ears, but we're going to talk about that. But first, we got to get into a message from Gametime. Listen, if you're a sports fan, higher chances than not you try to go to live events. Well, Gametime is the place to go get your tickets. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. Gametime has the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Again, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Pat. So Nikola Vucevic was interviewed. Actually, it was during, I believe, Goran Dragic. He played his last international game. It was kind of a retirement party for him, and he was interviewed about the Chicago Bulls. He talked about Lonzo and even how, like, when Lonzo was there and how he kind of fit in between everybody as far as, like, he helped that team kind of go. The other players were able to focus on offense because of how good Lonzo Ball was defensively. But one of the more interesting things in this interview that I want to kind of pull out and focus on is he said that he has 2 years left with the Chicago Bulls, but he wants to play 2 more years after that before considering retirement. Now, this is a translated article, so maybe there's a little bit lost in translation. I want to be clear there. But the thought process of Vooch playing 2 more years after the 2 years he has left on the Chicago Bulls deal, I want to throw this to you, Pat. Could he stay with the Chicago Bulls? Could Vooch take that next contract, get another contract with the Bulls? Maybe it's a little bit less to finish out his career here. Could something like that be in the future for Nikola Vucevic?
100%. Because Vooch is an asset that, like I said, most teams want. Vooch doesn't fit the Bulls right now because the Bulls are in a weird state. They're not in a winning state, right? They're in a they're in a state of flux right now. And so having a guy like Nikola Vucevic on your team doesn't make sense. But this is the NBA. That state of flux changes quickly, right? The Indiana Pacers were not a threat, and then they acquired Tyrese Halliburton, and all of a sudden you were just like, ooh, this team's pretty good all of a sudden, right? So that changes very, very fast depending on what you get out of your young players. And I'll tell you this right now: if you have good young players, if you have young pieces on your team that are looking to go about or that take that next step, you're going to be looking to go about keeping a veteran presence like Nikola Vucevic on this team. And I know people are going to come and say, oh, but he's a terrible pick and roll defender. Oh, he's a terrible paint defender. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. You're not wrong. But at the end of the day, when you get that level of production out of that one spot, when you get production level that you don't have to worry about. And I think that's the part people don't take into account. There's so many spots you have to worry about in professional sports that when you can finally have a spot that you just go, like next season, I'm not worried that we're going to get 17 and 11 out of the center position. Those are important things to get. Would I like to see better pick and roll defense? Sure. Would I like to see better rim protection? Sure. But you also have players that are better suited for that role. But I still know there's going to be 17 and 11 at the center position, at least to start the year. Those kind of players you don't move on from, especially if you have a separate team established that is a group of young guys that can go out there and dominate. So I think that if this young Bulls team turns it around really quick, yeah, I could not only see Nikola Vucevic being here throughout this contract, but also here for the foreseeable future.
I mean, and that's going to be something that, a lot of Bulls fans look at the contract extension that Vooch got as something that maybe shouldn't have happened despite the production, things like that. But I think for anyone who's hearing that and getting triggered, I'd say this. We're not saying that Vooch is going to be a starter over that next contract. It's just that he is a player that can still produce. Now, there is some concerns about, like, how's Vooch's game going to age? And I understand that. But here's the thing that I'll say to this, and Pat, you can let me know. It's not like Vooch is jumping out the gym right now.
He never has.
Exactly.
Vooch
Like,
got one dunk a year where for some reason he going to pull up on the rim and pelvic thrust. We have no idea why.
Bro, you always know. I wonder what the record is for Bulls in games where Vooch pelvic thrust his opponent, bro. Because it's always hilarious.
Bro, gotta be strong, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't think we've lost a pelvic thrust game, bro. I'm trying to go back in the Rolodex here. I don't just keep that committed to memory, but like usually Vooch is cooking when we get a Vooch dunk and pelvic thrust.
Yeah. You get a Vooch dunk and pelvic thrust combo. That's usually a dub there. That's usually a dub. So, it is what it is, man. Could you imagine getting dunked on and then pelvic thrust?
Right, bro.
I gotta fight you after the game at that point,
bro. Especially by Vooch, that like,
of all people.
But bro, like, here's the thing. It always throws me off because like people be turning into it. Like it just be like, I'm gonna get this block, and I'm like. I'm actually impressed that you didn't get the block. Like, how did you just get dunked on by Nikola Vucevic, and why do you have a Vucci in your face? Can we say that? Can we get away with that? It's my last week here. I know what they gonna do. Fire me? Hey, dog. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, man.
Did you say a Vucci in your face?
Vucci out your face, man.
That's crazy.
End of the day, y'all gotta protect yourselves on the court, man. There's a lot of Vucci out here.
That's wild. Wow. Okay. I mean, hey. No notes.
You don't know where to go from here, do you? You got.
I have no idea where to take this now.
Right in the Vucci. Let me ask you this, dog.
Yeah. That's crazy.
If what kind of production would you need to see out of this team to keep Vooch around? I think that's the big question. What level of winning do you need to see from this young team for Vooch to be a part of the future?
I'd say this. If Vooch is not moved by the trade deadline this year, and by the end of this season, you see a legitimate path where through the development of your young guys, you're going to start contending for a playoff spot going forward. Meaning that even if, let's say, the Bulls in this season, they're right outside the play-in, they do get to keep their lottery pick. You add a talent that you feel extremely confident by, and maybe even that's a young center. I wouldn't mind. Like, Vooch is a smart enough player. He's good enough, like, to where as long as we're having some semblance of winning, I'm not mad at Vooch being on the roster. Like, it's a bunch of concerns I have on the roster before Nikola Vucevic. So I'll say this. They go 30 to 35 games. I'm cool with Vooch staying around. Now, I still think you need to find your center of the future, but I'm not saying that you need to necessarily jettison off Vooch at that point.
Now, I do think that is going to be interesting, right? If you go into the draft next year, or I guess if Jalen Smith is that guy, I don't feel great about that, but there's a chance. But I don't think that Vooch is a good enough player to stop you from moving off of him. And I think that's the thing Bulls fans got to understand. Like, you can have Vooch on the team, and he doesn't have to be the player that, like, Well, why would we move on from this guy? We got 18 and 11 right there. Well, if you find a better prospect, you go with the better guy.
That's the fact.
Like, I think that's the point we're at in Vucevic's career.
Yeah, and everybody gets there at some point. So it is what it is. No slight to Vuce.
Speaking of all that Vucci in your face, man, we got to talk about the best dunks in Bulls history. I don't know if you guys saw this over the weekend, but Bulls dropped a very interesting video. I'm not gonna lie, there's a Jordan dunk on there that made it a little high for me. We'll talk about that in this final topic. But first, we got to tell you guys all about our sponsors and friends over at FanDuel. Listen, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers, listen in on this, dog. This is a deal. We all got to get in on this. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on to download America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, Pat, before we get out of here today, the Bulls dropped a video of the top dunks in Chicago Bulls history. And the top 10 dunks in Chicago Bulls history. And this was a lot of nostalgia that just drove me crazy. Of course, the was some point, hopefully Patrick Williams can get on the list. Like this is
don't count on it.
Was
Tom and Jerry, don't you believe it?
That's crazy. Was Patrick on Ewing. Number 10 was Derrick Rose on Joel Anthony. So just the wide range of that. But before we get into our personal top dunks, how'd you feel about the Bulls putting this together in the middle of the offseason?
I mean, great nostalgia. I loved it. Like I watched it. It's only about 4 minutes, but like when you watch it, it's just like all the throwbacks. Number 1 being Pippen on Ewing makes perfect sense. I would agree that is probably the most iconic Chicago Bulls dunk of all time. Number 2, I feel like you just needed to throw a Jordan one in there.
Yeah.
Jordan on Alonzo Mourning is not a better dunk than Jordan dunking over the Knicks. Like why? Like is it just because of the yell in the face? Like that wasn't. I feel like you were just like, oh man, wait a minute, we got the Derrick Rose and Scottie Pippen as the top 2. We gotta put Jordan in there. Like you didn't have to. If you do the Knicks one, like that was not the second greatest dunk in Bulls history. And I don't know. Have I talked about my Goran Dragic theory on here?
Yeah, we've talked about it several times.
Did we have that conversation? Because
the Bulls said F that.
Seeing Goran Dragic get run back yet again as dunk number 3. He said, "You can Google Goran Dragic Bulls all you want. I'm not letting it be shown." And the Bulls were like, hey, "Run the tapes,
run the footage."
He shouldn't
do much for
My
us.
favorite part about that dunk is it stopped Goran Dragic from ever playing defense at the rim again, and he has said this on record. Like
he added me, he's like, "I've never gotten dunked on again." I mean, yeah, it's hard to when you don't play defense at the rim.
Down there again.
So,
dog.
Yeah.
But no, man, I thought that the top 10 was pretty good. Definitely a ton of nostalgia. I forgot how disrespectful the D Wade or the Taj on D Wade was.
Bro, and that was in the playoffs too.
Yeah, we didn't.
That's what was crazy. It was in the playoffs at that. Like, yeah, that was a very, very disrespectful dunk. There was 2 Zach LaVine's one on there, but one that was, I think, was an alley from Lonzo Ball. I didn't even remember that dunk when I saw it. I haven't even thought about that dunk. And that's probably the most recent one on this list. And I hadn't even thought about it since it happened. But you know,
I wish it showed the records on that game, because I would almost guarantee you that is probably like game 10 of the season, of the first season.
That was the Zach LaVine 360 dunk on the Dallas Mavericks at that.
Yeah. The other one that I did like in there, I forgot about this. This is how long I've been doing Bulls coverage for bad Bulls teams. I forgot that he yammed on Ralph Sampson's head. Yeah. And Sampson tried to fight him, and Zach was like, "You're not worth my time." Like exactly. That was one of my. Let's be real. We don't see a lot of chest-to-chest dunks anymore.
That's a fact. It doesn't happen
much get out the way. They're like, "You're not putting me on a poster."
Yeah.
And is that the last chest-to-chest dunk we've really seen? No, DJJ got Giannis. How's that not on here?
Bro, I mean, you got to make some cuts, bro. You got to make some cuts.
DJJ over Giannis to me is more iconic than Zach LaVine 360 wide open dunk.
Wide open, yeah. The wide open dunks is like, there's so many through the contact dunks that it's like, wide open dunks never should make a top 10 list when you have dunks that you have to absorb some contact on. Like, I'd rather see a Vooch pelvic thrust dunk on there.
We could have got a pelvic thrust, bro. You could have thrown some Vucci in my face on this one, bro. What are you laughing about, bro? What's going on? Saying, bro.
Queued like, that one up and didn't even mean to. That's hilarious, man.
Just saying.
That's funny. That's funny.
Nah, man. I feel like it was a solid list. It was a solid list. I do like Jordan climbing Mount Mutombo. I thought that might have been a little low though. Like again, that's below a Zach LaVine wide open 360 dunk.
Exactly.
Can we all acknowledge that the pass was better than the dunk?
Yes.
Like the Lonzo Ball full court pass was more impressive than the freaking 360 dunk. Even though the 360 dunks are made because you know it's gonna be Muzz on here. Like you could do a 360 dunk. Nobody's saying that
it's amazing. And you don't see a lot of them during games. So I get it. I understand that.
But like it's Zach LaVine, bro. Like if it was freaking CJ Watson doing a 360 dunk, all right, that's different. Yeah, I mean, but it's Zach LaVine. We know he can 360 dunk. Like, I don't know. Now I'm just griping about stupid stuff. Was there one that you felt was a major snub on the list?
Not off the top of my head, no. But I know there is some. It's just not off the top of my head. What about you?
Now that I've said it, I think DJJ is a snub. I think that
DJJ is a fair one.
I think that doesn't Joe Keane got one where he basically like dunks on half of the freaking what team was that? Was that the Knicks? Dunks on like everybody on the Knicks, like under the basket.
I mean, it sounds like something definitely that could happen.
I love the bro. Like if we talking about a favorite, or I guess an iconic one, the Joakim Noah over Paul Pierce is one of the most iconic.
Well, that's on the list.
It's on the list. No, I'm just saying. But like if we talking about an iconic one, I don't know if there was a ton of the DJJ one is probably the biggest snub that I can think of right now. Because he absolutely like not a lot of people dunk on Giannis. And DJJ was like, I'm chest to chest in this mud. Let's go.
That's fair. I'm trying to think.
Vucci on Randall is a good one, but I don't think it belongs on the list.
No, Vucci on Randall doesn't. Yeah, no, there's another dunk. There's a MJ at Madison Square Garden with the cradle.
Oh, that is not on here.
That's not on the list.
Wow.
Yeah, that should be on the list.
Wait. That is crazy, actually.
It's not on the list.
You know what's nuts? I just assumed I watched the list like 3 times. I just assumed it was on.
That's the biggest. Come on. We got a wide open 360 dunk, but not the come on.
Man, the cradle is nuts. We did get the little in and out though. Maybe they gave you the in and out where he goes by Oakley and over Ewing.
Yeah, but still,
so maybe they were like, we gave you that 4 again. But how's that 4?
That's what I'm saying.
Is that not nasty? The handle and everything, that's not nastier than the Goran Dragic dunk. We had some great moments here in Chicago, man. We've had some great moments. Let's hope we can get some more. Kobe White's not dunking on nobody. I'll tell you what absolutely we need to do a top 10 worst dunk attempts in Chicago Bulls history because we saw like 6 of those last year.
Yeah, I know which one's gonna be number 1. That's for damn sure.
Kobe White, no question.
Hey, bro, that is got to be one of the biggest blunders, not just in Chicago Bulls history, but in NBA history, bro.
You wondering how I got here,
and the fact that they captured the face too, bro. That's just the confusion.
Kobe White had no idea what was going on.
You know, if Kobe White ever does leave the Chicago Bulls, that's highlight is going to be in that package right there.
God, that would be phenomenal, bro. Just Kobe just looking up, just like, I'm so ready for the season to end. We can stop doing this. Done.
Send us out, man. Let's get up out of here, bro.
Hey, man, follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, showing love.
You guys can follow me at CEO Haize, man. We thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. We are free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube. For Pat the Designer, this has been Locked On Bulls. We out here, y'all. Peace.
Some Gucci in your face is a wild way to go.
Crazy.